Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me today is one of our key contributors, as I'm calling these guys. Last night we had a key contributor, and Immaculate did a great job. Tonight it's Moen Vision. Moen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. We miss seeing his face, but he works for the FBI, so nobody take it personal. So today wasn't going to do a show today. I know I put a poll on Twitter and I got about a 60 and 40 response for do a show or not. There's a lot of questions out there about what's going to happen with Colorado and then what's going to happen with the Pac-12. And this show today is actually going to start in a different direction. We will talk about those topics, but I really want to key on something that we've been talking about on my show for the last 3 months. And that is, where do we go after realignment is done? What is the final fashion that we have in college football? And we're only going to key on college football. Basketball is important. We will reference it, but it's certainly not something that drives the bus. So before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Please subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter. Both of us follow Moen Vision on Twitter and also on YouTube. And then please subscribe. And then if you want to leave a comment, you can either do a super chat, or on the main page, there's a join button. Click that and you can be a subscriber. And those subscribers I always key on first for their comments. So Moen, before we get started, is there anything you want to lay the groundwork here before we start sharing these slides?
Sure. This is looking at what I believe the future of college football is. That is it's the A3 model, where you have 3 conferences that essentially will control college football. Of those 3 conferences, you will have the Big 10, you will have the SEC, and you will have the Big 12. And if you want to start, we can start with the Big 10.
You bet. Absolutely. Hang on one second. Bring this up. There you go. Let me call out some people really quick. Forgot to do that,
Sure.
Mo, and I apologize. Earl was first in the house. Pickles was right behind him. Thanks for being here, guys. BR, thanks for being here. These are all, I would call them contributors to the show. They were some of our first subscribers. Conundrum's here. Let's see. Robert Francis in the house. Hi, Robert. Simon Says is back. Laura Weiss is here. Nick Flynn. Oh, boy, we got a bunch. Jim F., welcome here. Maverick Buster, David Hackett, Tony Washington. Tony, you need to give me a phonetic way to say your name. Send that in a DM in Twitter because I'm butchering it. I know I'm doing that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And let's start with this slide. Go ahead, Moen.
Okay, so the big conference, it goes to 24 teams. 24 teams. You've got 4 divisions of 6 teams. They are regional divisions, if you will notice, and that is to protect traditional regional rivalries. 10 conference game schedule. The 10th conference game would be to be determined. The champion of each pod would face each other in a semifinal, and then the following week would be the championship game. The teams that don't make it into the semifinal would play each other in a ranked system for their 10th game. You would have one cross-division rivalry to protect historic rivalries. For example, Notre Dame and USC. Out-of-conference scheduling. First, you must protect your rivalries. For example, Iowa and Iowa State, the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Iowa would be required to give preference to Iowa State to maintain that rivalry, even though they are not in the same conference. The same would be true about Washington and Washington State, as well as Oregon and Oregon State in this scenario. The only difference is some of those games may have to be played earlier, or they may have to be played before the Week 10 games, somewhere in there. There's going to be a loss of some tradition here, but I think this makes the most sense for tradition. In the Western Division, you have USC, UCLA, which we already know. Washington and Oregon do get in. Their travel partners are Utah and Arizona State. I do not see Stanford agreeing to the Big Ten's Academic Alliance and Cancer Research Consortium. And due to political reasons, I do not see Cal making it in. The Plains Division, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Northwestern. Central Division: Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Indiana, Purdue. Coastal Division: Miami, UNC, Georgia Tech, Maryland, Rutgers, and of course, the coastal powerhouse, Notre Dame. Now, why is Notre Dame on the Coastal Division? The answer is because that's what Notre Dame wants. That will be what the Big Ten gives Notre Dame. They will not be forced to be in a conference with Ohio State, Michigan, any of those, and they will get to play. It'll create the Notre Dame-Miami rivalry every year. It'll create the Notre Dame-Georgia Tech, who have a rivalry every year. A lot of these protect existing rivalries, and there's an opportunity to create some new ones. So, for example, Wisconsin's cross division could end up being Washington. Call it the Big W Trophy. For Purdue, I've been harping on this one, Purdue and Georgia Tech, the Engineer Trophy. Who's got the best engineer in college? So this is 24 teams. This is the Big Ten. So now we can move on to the SEC.
Let's answer a few questions here. Is that cool,
Yeah.
Owen?
Yeah,
Where we're going? So Tony has a question here. He says some of those schools are not even close to being worth a full share. He's saying 20 maximum. How do you address that? And then really, and also on top of that, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about the Alliance for Football Conference. We're not talking about value, right? This is not a value conversation. It's about what are the ones that are most aligned together and they would work together. Is that correct?
Well, no, this is value too, because when you get down to A3, you consolidate, you control more of the media market, you have more leverage on the media market. So I understand what Tony's saying from 2023's point of view. This does not add value. From 2029's point of view, this does add value. With 10 conference games, you're giving your partners 240 football games. That's a lot of content.
It is. And so we'll get back to sort of some of those conversations. I think that was a great question, Tony. And I think we'll circle back once we're done with those, that thought process. Let me move to the next one. Hang on one second. I got to change the slide. Let's see. Which you want to do Pac next?
Let's do SEC next.
Okay. SEC. Got it. All right. This is worth the wait, people. All right, here we go.
So the SEC, 10 conference game schedule, maintains regional footprint. You play everybody in your division, rotating cross-divisional games, reduction of existing rivalries. Now, I have this currently broken out into Western Division and Eastern Division. This can also be broken into Western Division 1, Western Division 2, Eastern Division 1, Eastern Division 2. There's some, you're going to have to come up with some competitive balance issues here, I think. But you can basically play everybody within your divisional pod and then rotate each year what other divisional pod you would want to play. Much like the Big Ten, I think you would want to have a semi as that 10th game with ranked games going back and forth to determine who will play in your conference championship game. So this keeps the SEC within their contingent footprint. They add a few schools. They're going to add Clemson and Florida State, the two large brands. They're going to add North Carolina State to get a foothold in North Carolina. And they're going to take the University of Virginia. Now, this is a sticky wicket for me. University of Virginia and University of North Carolina, I think that's going to be interchangeable between the Big Ten and the SEC. I think whoever gets one gets the other. But the SEC definitely needs to get into North Carolina, and I think they want to add Virginia as well to get into the DC marketplace. What University of Virginia lacks in athletic prowess, it makes up for in money prowess and influence prowess, especially in Washington, D.C. And as we saw with the statement on NIL legislation earlier, that's important.
Completely agree. So the one question I had on this list, and I agree with all this, by the way, the only one that I had a question about was UVA. And it is because of that academic standing part of it. But I agree with you. They're going to end up in one of them. It's just a matter of which one goes where. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I think whoever misses out on UNC gets UVA. I think
Okay.
that's a consolation prize. So.
Okay, I think that's fair. If you just joined the show, there's 80 of you, and it's just going to keep growing. If you want your comment to be read, please either subscribe to the show or give me a super chat, and I'll make sure to get that comment out. Otherwise, I'm trying to do the best I can to just pick and choose when they come in. I want to say hi to a few more people. Let's see here. Larry Pilgrim just got here. Appreciate it. Ag biochemist and Immaculate's in the house. So. Man, it's just growing and growing. We're at 81. Let's see if we can break the bank here. All right.
Just want to the Virginia Tech. I just want to answer some questions on that. Yes, Virginia Tech, Virginia's a smaller school, not as good athletically, but in terms of political influence, University of Virginia is going to be above Virginia Tech. And I think that the SEC wants to get in that old money, deep South Virginia, and that is UVA.
I'm sorry, I can't remember. You said Pac-12 or you said Big 12?
Let's go to the Big 12. Let's go to the third of the A3.
Yep. All right. I got it right here. Queued up. There you go.
Okay, so this is the 12. We don't have a name for it yet. There's probably going to be some rebranding going on here. But let's take a look. Again, 10 conference game schedule. The best basketball conference while maintaining competitive football teams, renewal of historic rivalries. Again, I've just put these two divisions here. This could be, there's ways we can alter this, but this just gives you an idea where I think everybody lands. So in the old friends division, you've got all your old friends. Your new friends division, you got a lot of new friends. You got UConn. You have Boston College, you have Syracuse, you have Pitt, you had Louisville, you have Virginia Tech, you had Duke and Wake Forest to go along with UCF. You get a lot of great basketball content here without sacrificing with basketball-only members. You get into the Northeast corridor that Brett Yormark wants to get into. You also get to claim a piece of the prize, which is North Carolina. You get into Virginia for the D.C. market. You get into Boston for the Boston market. Don't look for these teams to be great at football. You don't need that. You've got a top to bottom good conference here with great basketball, good football, stretches across 3 time zones. I don't think you're going to find a better basketball conference than this one right here.
So let's talk about this. I see this is only 22. So
yes,
who are the 2
22
schools? Oh, right. So who are we missing? Who are we not accounting for in this group?
Well, there's lots of schools we're not accounting for, but I'm only putting 22 into the 12.
Okay.
So the Big 10 would be 24, the SEC would be 20, and the Big 12, or the 12 as we're calling it here, would be 22 teams. Now, they could get to 24. There are realistic possibilities out there that could get them to 24.
Okay.
And then we can bring up the last one of the, so these are our A3. These are the conferences that survive.
So let's talk about that. What does the A3 mean?
That means you have what we currently have is the A5. You've got the PAC and the ACC. This takes into account the eventual demise of the PAC as an A5 and the ACC as an A5. The ACC gets absorbed by mostly the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10. The PAC gets mostly absorbed. There is still a remnant of the PAC that I think refills. And if you want to pull that slide up here.
Which one you talking about? You want to do the PAC?
The PAC in the Mountain West.
Yeah, let me answer this question really quick here from Ryan Thomas. Ryan, thanks for being here. It's good to see you. He says, I think football will separate from conferences altogether. We spoke about this last night, Moen. The conferences will handle the Olympic sports, but there will be a semi-pro league organized geographically that will control scheduling. Do you see the A3 graduating to this model?
No.
Okay.
I think college football stays separate from. You're talking about a semi-professional, almost,
Right.
NFL
It's
light model.
bifurcated. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that this works for all parties too, because with A3, nobody can do anything without at least one of the other people. It's better for
Right.
partnerships.
Okay.
So people are asking, well, the SEC and the Big Ten have so much power. Why would they need the Big 12?
Right.
That's your checks and your balances right there. That's
And
your third partner.
I completely agree. I don't think they can cut out the other half of the what you might call the remainder schools. I just don't think they disappear. They have to be involved, and I don't think that's going to happen. Thanks everybody for your comments. I really appreciate you doing that. If you're just new to the channel or you got here just fresh today, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment or suggestion. I get these show ideas from those comments and suggestions, and so far I've kept up on all of them. So if you leave them, I will try to get back to you and leave some sort of a reply. The other thing is, if you want your comment to stand out, I'm trying to grab them as they come, but you could subscribe. The lowest subscription model is $3, and for a month that gets you, highlighted comments. Or if you're not going to do a subscription, always super chats. The other thing is, I want to just really call out, I've got my setup here, and I'm ready to start receiving stuff. You guys told me, I had probably 10 people tell me, I'll send you a helmet, I'll send you a pennant, I'll send you a flag. I've got everything set up now, so you guys got to fulfill what you said you were going to do. So send me your hat, send me your helmet, and I want to put them up behind me, and I'm going to make those a big deal of the show once I start getting a big number. And that matters a lot to me, especially as we're talking about Big 12 stuff. All right, let's go to our last slide, and I think I've got it queued up here. There you go.
So this is what we're left with. The Pac. Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford. They hold together. They try and coalesce something of a conference to remain. They add Colorado State. They add UNLV for the Las Vegas market. They add San Diego State. They add Fresno State. They add an SMU, and they add a Tulane. Mountain West Conference does much of the same. They rob Peter to pay Paul. They add UTSA, North Texas. Ultimately, what these could do, this could end up becoming one conference. This could end up becoming a situation where these two conferences could have a champion that plays each other to give themselves a boost for consideration in the new playoff system, the college football playoff system.
So they would not be part. These two conferences, to be clear, are not part of the A3. So let's say that again.
They are not.
The autonomous 5 we have now will shrink to 3, and then these are basically remainder conferences. I hate to say that, but that's honestly what they're looking to be. And they would have access to the playoff, but not any guaranteed seats. Is that how you would see it?
Yeah, well, I think with the college football playoff, I think we're eventually going to get to no AQs. There's not going to be any automatic qualifiers. It's going to be 12 best. So you're going to do whatever you can to improve your schedule and improve your strength of schedule. So that's why I could see the Pac and the Mountain West here working together, having their own conference champions play against each other for a boost there. It lets the snobs in the Pac have a little better academic conference,
right?
Instead of just merging with the Mountain West.
I think there's power in numbers, but I also think they covet that exclusivity. So we'll have to see. That the other model I could see, and you tell me if this sounds at all doable. California and Stanford decide to drop out completely, and either they don't compete at the highest level in those two main sports, or they go independent, and then the remainder schools all get to one conference, whether it has Pac or Mountain West Conference branding, and they're sort of like 3+1. How does that sound to you?
That's very possible, and I could see Stanford just dropping football entirely as a sport and competing, competing regionally for their Olympic sports, and this becoming one conference. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have consolidation of some of these G5s as well. I think for the Pac schools, people wondering where those 4 Pac schools went, this is kind of where I think they'll go, which I believe is unfortunate for Oregon State and Washington State.
Right.
I think if you were going to add 2 teams to the Big 12 to get to that 24 model, I would add Washington State and Oregon State. I just
That's
don't know that the
true.
Big 12 wants to get to that 24 model.
Yeah,
but
let's
yeah,
talk
if you pull
about
up the
that
12,
again.
you could easily drop in a Washington State and an Oregon State in there.
I
And
completely
that
agree
would
with you.
get you that fourth time zone. It's going to add a little more travel restrictions. You're going to have to do a little more budgeting, but then you could do, how would you do that? Washington.
Yeah, let's
You
look at
have
that
your
for a second.
Washington, yeah.
So if
BYU,
you,
Arizona, Colorado, Washington State, Oregon State, and Oklahoma State, maybe. No, give them Iowa State. I think Iowa State might fit better in there than splitting up Oklahoma State from the Texas schools. There's options. There's
right,
obviously options here.
if anybody can dress that up, it'd be Brett Yormark. I guarantee you. So this is a great question, and it was asked a couple times from Maverick. Maverick, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it. Why is KU not coveted by the Big Ten? I know that's been mythical for years from Kansas. I have more fans from each conference, so root most of them. What do you think about Kansas as a potential move to the Big Ten?
There was a time that Kansas was considered as teams 13 and 14 before they ended up ultimately going with Rutgers and Maryland. Kansas and Missouri were pitched, but the additional time I've heard about Kansas coming to the Big Ten was when Nebraska originally came to the Big Ten. And again, that was a situation where Missouri, and it got complicated.
Right.
Kansas fans, is just another reason to hate Missouri. I won't get into it, but Jim Delaney's talked about it a couple times, but it's just another reason for Kansas fans to hate Missouri with a passion. So it's nothing personal against Kansas. They got a great basketball brand, and I think staying in the 12 gives you the best basketball conference. That's only going to increase the value of your brand. So for Kansas, I think the best thing they can do is just stay right there in the Big 12.
So one of the things we talked about last night, and we had a long discussion, is again bifurcating football and basketball from each other and how that branding goes forward. And we talked about perception not being the greatest for if you're trying to do two things. In fact, you I'm quoting you by saying you can't serve two masters is what you said last night.
Yeah,
So
right.
how does that reconcile with what we got here in front of us on this slide?
Well, I mean, you take a look at these schools here. Look at the basketball power that you have put together. You've got Arizona, Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Syracuse, UConn, Louisville, Duke.
Right.
Wake Forest is up. Wake Forest has their years. West Virginia, we've got to see what happens with them with Huggins resigning. But, I mean, I don't think you've ever seen a conference with this much basketball strength in it.
I completely agree with you. I don't think there is. It's just the question out there is, can we keep the perception that it's still an A league by saying, they would be A3, A2 and A1. They're all in the same group. Do they, it's just that perception deal. Is that going to be a deal breaker? I guess that's the only thing. Out in the world of football, if you put this conference together, will they still keep the gravitas needed to stay in that national conversation?
I think so, because again, you're going to need partners here.
Right.
The Big is going to need the Big 12 as a partner. The SEC is going to need the Big 12 as a partner. With the addition of the new NIL legislation that's going through.
Right. We'll go through that in a second. Yeah.
Right. You're not going to have these schools that have been spending, let's just say Oregon, who's going out there and spending 7 figures on a recruit to get them away from Georgia. They're not going to have that power anymore.
Right.
So that'll level the playing field for a lot of these schools. Yeah, you're still going to have the brands are still going to recruit. Kansas is always going to recruit the best basketball players. Ohio State's always going to recruit the best football players. I mean, that's not going to change. But now that we get that NIL situation worked out, we get that portal situation worked out, there's a lot more parity here. And with the college football playoff, it could be either 12 or 16. That's a lot of spaces for a lot of schools to jump in there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Sergeant Pickles, who's one of our valued subscribers, thanks for being here, Pickles. He's asking you a question. I could be wrong, but I thought I remembered reading it actually takes a lot to remove A5 status. Even a glorified Mountain West Conference would stay A5.
It would if it was what it would have to be the pack, but it would not. It would no longer really be the pack. So I mean, and that would be another reason for possibly the Big 12 to take Washington State and Oregon State, and leave Stanford and Cal out there on their own islands. You basically you're taking away the ACC and the pack out of this equation.
Right.
Everybody's taking a piece of it. And then you're going to have that best of the rest G5 situation. These G5s are going to have to consolidate, and I think they're going to have to come up with their own postseason partnerships to try and make themselves stand out. To get one of those slots in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I totally see this, and you and Immaculate have gone back and forth between 24 and 25, and how many are the ones that stand out? I think, though, I can totally see the 3, right? I think it's easy to envision 3 power conferences just like this, and then the fourth really would be a 3+1. I could maybe see where you go to an A4. That is not out of the realm of possibility, but it definitely would water down the payouts, and I think that would be something they're trying to avoid. That's why we're doing consolidation, right? That's why we're seeing more people moving together instead of breaking apart.
Right.
And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The A5, yes, I understand what it says in the NCAA bylaws, but if there's those 5 conferences don't exist, you technically can't have an A5. It just, you can't. So,
well, I think that's
let's even see if the NCAA is around by then, because I think when you get to this A3 model, I think you're probably going to see these exert so much control over the NCAA that it won't even matter.
Right. And Pickles again, he says to Immaculate, and he's talking about the ACC blowing up. Those 8 schools would have to leave at once to make that conference basically, if not disband, at least lose half its strength. How far are we away from that happening, in your opinion?
It's going to be dependent on what Notre Dame does.
Right.
I am of the belief, I know Greg Pflugart's friends at Florida State are of the belief, Notre Dame leaving the ACC would create a precedent that would allow every other team to leave the ACC.
Oh, by itself, not the whole conference, just the one.
Just the one. If Notre Dame leaves, there is a legal maneuver that can be. Okay, I should put it this way. The people at schools like Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina believe that by Notre Dame leaving the ACC, it sets a legal precedent that allows them to get out of the ACC.
Okay.
So if Notre Dame signs this deal with NBC, I think it gives the ACC a lot more security over the next 4 to 5 years.
Right.
If they don't get this deal worked out with NBC and the Big Ten starts winning them over more and more, then you're going to see a rapid acceleration of things, especially leading to 2026. Because keep in mind, the college football playoff to 12 teams with auto bids, that's only set through 2026.
Right.
Everybody's got to come to the table and reset that for 2026 and beyond. So you could be looking at this A3 happening as soon as 2 years from now.
And I think that's really important. I want to bring that up and just say that to all the new viewers that I've picked up in the last several weeks. One thing that we've stressed here is, one, that the auto qualifier conferences, we think we're not using P5 anymore. So if you're hearing just A and you're not hearing P5, that's on purpose. I'm setting expectations there. The other thing is, what we're trying to do is provide the most access to the most people. That's the purpose of these exercises. Last night when we were talking about with Immaculate, it was to get more people at the table. And that's what this exercise is about. And I'll take away, K-Do, I'll bring this comment back in a second, but if everybody looks here, you'll see there's a lot of, or at least a couple schools that aren't even in what you would call older A5 conferences. We're bringing in people from other conferences. That's the big deal. That's the thing everybody needs to hold on to, is even though it's streamlining it, doesn't mean we're losing access. In fact, I think it's giving access to a lot more people than you'd otherwise have. Let's see here. K-Doo's comment. He's again talking about Kansas. Needs to establish themselves more as a football competent school. Memorial Stadium is too small. You can read the rest of that. I heard you chuckle. How many years would it take for KU to be in the top 25 consistently for them to change the paradigm of that school?
Well, here's an interesting point, and I want to bring this up. Kansas to the Big Ten. I've specifically made this where nobody in the Big Ten poaches anybody from the Big 12 or the SEC or vice versa.
Right.
Because again, I think partnership is the key word here, not an alliance, a legitimate partnership. So that's kind of one of the reasons, because there is a case for Kansas in the Big Ten. It just, I don't think that they would ever poach Kansas away from the Big 12. I just don't think they would do that.
The important thing is, and while I'm doing this, I'm multitasking, so give me 1 second. The important thing is that people should know, and I'm going to close this down so we're not looking at it. People should know that at the end of the day, the access that we're giving and we're talking about is for everybody. It's not just for a certain subset of people. And I think that's really important. I'm trying to put a link in here so you guys can see this next thing. We're going to change gears before we'll come back to this, and we'll answer questions and do call-ins. I think we'll have a little time. But I want to get to a couple other topics here. Let me bring this up, and I want to talk about this right now. Hopefully, Greg doesn't put out a copyright request against me for posting one of his tweets. Anybody saw that last night? That was a nice fire drill. Okay, I'm just going to read this, and then we'll talk about this for a second. He says, look away if you're triggered at the posting of a public Board of Regents meetings at public universities. I love Greg. Not confirmed yet to be about conference realignment. Always keep your head on a swivel, which, of course, we do that here. And I totally tip the hat to Greg Pflugar, who has been a great mentor to me. So what do you think about this? I know everybody's going to parse the words and everything else, but I think the thing that's most important for people to understand is that this language down here is really a catch-all and can be used for anything. What do you think about the sudden scheduling of this?
Yeah, that's and and this was after they canceled the one last week. If you remember,
right.
They had one up last week.
That's right.
Canceled it, and that was canceled. And shortly after that was canceled, you had the article with the chancellor saying that he wanted to see the PAC's numbers. And now we found out there were no numbers presented to him, just more promises. This is one of those things. You're right. It could be anything, but let's be honest here. It's about realignment. I mean, come on. It's what else could it be? Legal advice on a specific matter, athletic operations.
Well, let's talk.
So they've either got a deal that the PAC has presented, or
right.
They have just become so fed up with not having that information that they're just saying, let's go.
So let's talk about messaging and common sense. Nothing was on the books for a Board of Regents meeting yesterday as of about 11 a.m. Mountain Time this morning. There was no meeting. There was also only one article that was sort of against Colorado at that time. That was the Canzano interview of Shadur Prime's son.
Shadur
Sanders.
Sanders, yeah.
Yeah, Shadur Sanders, and it was not a pleasant article. Look him up on Twitter, read the article. He even has the audio on there, and it was frankly, I thought it was an embarrassing interview, and to publish it and to talk about it that way, I just don't know what John is thinking. But that came out. The Board of Regents announcement came out, and not 5 minutes later, Wilner puts out an article that is slamming Colorado from a different angle. All of that messaging to go along with everything last week that happened at the Pac-12 Media Day. Unless this is just one giant feint, and it's just trying to put everybody off to sort of screw the Big 12 and everybody else that's been against them, doesn't common sense say that all these signs are leading to something?
Yeah, I could be wrong, but
I could be wrong, and I've said that. I totally could be wrong. So I don't know, but I just think if there's somebody in chat right now, and I'm sorry, I got to scroll down. There's so many comments. If you want your comment read, please either subscribe or do a super chat. So let's see here. Larry says athletic operations versus legal matters, and he shrugs his head. Yeah, that's a great question. K-Do says, Ryan Thomas, if it's executive session, I would say it's a closed door meeting. This is a public meeting.
No, that's an executive session. That's
Oh,
behind
sorry, I
closed
apologize.
doors.
Okay, so this is closed doors.
They
Okay.
can make that a public meeting at the drop of a hat, though. They can hold the executive session from 2 to 3, and then at 3 announce, hey, we're going public. So, I mean, you've already said it once, and Greg said it on there. Keep your head on a swivel. We don't.
Right.
It's going to happen there.
I'm going to post the link here for people to join the show, but I only want whoever actually can defend the Pac-12 in this case and prove to, or at least try to argue how this Board of Regents meeting to go along with all the other context that we've just talked about. Somebody join the show and tell me why they believe that is just more white noise. And while I'm waiting for somebody to join the show to do that, I'm going to bring up the NIL thing, which I thought was awesome today. And I'm just going to read this for those that can't read it online. Here we go. All right. It's basically, they went and they're going to Congress and they're trying this Manchin-Tuberville legislation is for NIL legislation. And this is from all 5 of the AQ5 conferences. And he's saying the introduction of today's bipartisan name, image, and likeness. And guess who's joining us? It's Larry Pilgrim. All right, Larry, hang on a second. Hang on, Larry.
All right.
Let me go back here to where I was. Let me just read this, and then we'll listen to you. Let's see. Legislation from Senators Manchin and Tuberville represents another step forward on the pathway to securing a future of college athletics. The recent increases in activity from lawmakers demonstrates the growing consensus that federal NIL legislation is necessary, and now is the time to act. We will continue working with members of Congress from both parties to develop a federal NIL standard in the coming weeks and months. So that, for one thing, when was the last time you saw a statement come out from all AQ5 conferences saying one unified thing? I can't remember the last time it happened. So that by itself tells you it's a pretty big deal. So we'll come back to this, but Larry's joined the show, and so I want to hear, Larry, tell us about this last 4 days for Colorado and what it means for the Pac-12.
I don't know. It's really strange. Like I mean, I'm trying to be, level-headed, no bias, just try to look at it from a perspective. And it's like, I don't know, before they had it was legal to discuss. This time it's just operations. And so I think if it's a legal matter, they would put legal matter, correct? I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. Ryan has put in some comments, and maybe Ryan, if you're there, if you want to join the show, take that link or here. I'll post it. Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
I went to Minnesota's website for like operational processes they use.
Right.
And when you kind of define that, it really doesn't give you anything in a sense of like, is it towards, are they dealing with hazing policies? Are they dealing with, I mean, it could be anything.
Right.
As far as finances, that's part of it. But it seemed like if it's financial, it didn't seem like they really put that in a operations.
Right.
It seems like that one's addressed a little differently than the type of operation that it's been linked under. I'm not defending or saying that it's not, because I've told you personally, I had a source in Colorado academically, but they're not that connected.
Right.
And they don't even, I honestly believe there's crap going on inside Colorado. And I think it's a house divided to a degree.
Right.
And so, 2 weeks ago, I was told they were staying. 5 days ago, by a different source, I was told they were staying. But that source, I'm not going to say that they are in the know. Yeah.
No, of course not. No,
but I wanted to make that clear, Nathan, so that
right.
Everybody, not you and I, there's also 100 people in the chat.
Right.
So it's not just me talking to you, because I'm like, a voice of reason sometimes. And so that's my take on it.
Okay.
Whether they have the votes for the Board of Regents, I put a thing on my Twitter everybody, I suggest you go look, okay? Because these are the people, if you've ever done like a jury duty type situation, go pull up the Board of Regents. It's the same site you go to get these announcements for their Board of Regents dates, and you can start looking through all of these people, and just you make your own decision which way you think these people would vote. Because I don't see the votes. I don't see the votes. But I'm not saying it's not going to happen. But I'm not worried about the Pac-12. And then the autonomous 5, this A3, it's not the autonomous 3. It's not going to. I don't see it happening. It's just when you have so many state flagships and universities that are in a conference, the power that they wield through Congress, Senate, all these things to try and get them removed, it's just not happening. So that's just my take.
I appreciate that, and if anybody is questioning Larry Pilgrim, you have to go through me, because I really, really appreciate his contributions to all the stuff I do. And so, Larry, thank you very much. You don't have to go anywhere. If I'm just going to mute you for a second, and I want Ryan to kind of we're doing point counterpoint here for a second. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Ryan. So you've been watching this, and we want to stay real civil here, right?
No.
So,
But
yeah, tell us what you're thinking.
Larry makes a really good point here, because there's a lot of political stuff that's involved at the regent level, and there's there's a lot of internal politics that we just don't have a visual of.
Right.
And that could very well be the delay of why Colorado hasn't left, is because of that issue, and it may be why they don't leave at all or stay. It just depends whether or not the votes are there, and I think Larry makes a really good point there, and we'll see what happens. I do think that regardless, that meeting tomorrow is going to be about the TV situation in the Pac. I think it's certainly related to conferences, whether it's about discussing, where they're at and, what the game plan is, or how much longer they're willing to be patient, or whether it's to, hey, let's just bolt and go. I can't tell you, but I think Moen is absolutely right that this is going to be it's going to be something surrounding athletics from a conference realignment standpoint / media standpoint. And I think that's he makes a very good point there. And obviously, it's an interesting time. I'll go on a sidetrack here. I think the Pac-12 has to remember that right now, the issue that's hurting them right now is the same issue that got them in trouble to begin with, and that's they're chasing money. Clear back when Larry Scott set up the Pac network, he didn't have ESPN or Fox or anyone help him out with it. And, the issue is, well, we would keep more of the money, but the issue is they had no clue what they were doing, and they were bearing all the capital expenses. They didn't have the economies of scale that the larger networks did, or the power to basically market it with various, cable and satellite distributors. But the issue is they were chasing money there, and now you look at the situation here right now. Kind of going to the open market and chasing after the streamers and Apple, and thinking that Apple and Amazon would just buy the tier 2 and tier 3 games. I think it's led to a disappointment. I think the biggest thing they could do right now is, to be honest, I think they want to stay together, and I think that that's the preference. But if they're going to make it happen, they all have to come to the realization that they're going to have to take a PR hit and, come in, whatever it is. I valued it around about $24.5 million per school. If that's what they get and they stay together, if they probably get a 4 or 5 year deal. I don't think it's going to be 3, but probably a 5 year deal, and use the next 5 years to retool and rebrand and strengthen themselves. I think, at this point, if I'm Greg Kliakoff, I just basically have that come to Jesus moment with the presidents and say, hey, look, this is what the money is. This is the exposure you're going to get. You just need to, you got to live with it, and we just got to, spend the next 5 years rebuilding. People forget that George Washington didn't win the Revolutionary War with masterful, great tactical victories. He won it because he knew when to retreat and how, when to live to fight another day. And I think that's a lesson that the pack can take from this.
I appreciate that, and I know that the data that you've gone through, especially when we've had Jeff on, has been just really deep, Ryan. So I really appreciate that insight, and I know you know a lot about the executive sessions, and you and Larry are great to have as resources. So just stick around here with me for just a minute or two, you guys. So this comment from Pickles, I think, is really important. It's the one thing that everybody points back to, and that is these Board of Regents meetings pop up all the time. And it is true. In the last year, I've seen more Board of Regents than I think have ever been in the history of time. I don't know about you guys, but it's like we've seen so many come and go. And some have had content and others have been mysterious. This one, in context, with all the timing and everything that's happened in the last 4 or 5 days, it's hard to ignore if we just trace the last 5 days. Thursday was supposed to, sort of throw the gauntlet down. They were supposed to present a deal. The deal didn't come. They didn't show anybody numbers, and they were loud about it. They went out and told the world they didn't see any numbers. Friday comes out, and they were already told they're not supposed to ask questions about not told, but they're induced to not really ask about the media deal, and yet the media deal comes in and it's frosty during the interview time. Then you talk about both Colorado resources that were there for the talking sessions, gone. They leave, and if you take it in measurement of the entire time of the day, they're there a very short amount of time and they leave, and they have no access to the public. You go over the weekend. We know Brett Yormark comes back from Europe on his trip. Yesterday, we had the Brett Yormark interview with Joe Klatt, which again, people sort of poo-pooed, but I personally believe that was more signaling. It was timed for a reason. Now, this is all my opinion. This is all Bomber's opinion, nobody else's. And then today, more conversation. We thought nothing was going to happen. I think even Greg said, yeah, he reset the stage for Act 13. Everybody was listening. And then not 3 hours later, this Board of Regents thing pops up. So in context, and I'm asking both Ryan and Larry before I let you guys go, because I got more people that I need to get on here. But for you two, where do you think this ends in? Let's just give it by the end of the month, by the end of August, where are we with all this stuff that's going on?
Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I still think everybody's going to stay. I think my opinion right now is Colorado, us being told somebody's either re-entered the market or whatever. And then all of a sudden Apple comes out today, which is rather strange, and announces, hey, we want everything. And so are they still trying to negotiate with the linear situation? How much money is Apple going to hold? How can you have a definitive number if people are asking for a minimum of linear or try to work it out? Right. Well, Apple's going to go down in price. So I truly believe there's still negotiations. I think there's base numbers. So I think other people may be saying, well, how much, linear can we get? Like, we'll take less money. What's Apple willing to do? And it's really strange to me that Apple's been really quiet, but they had no qualms coming out today and saying, pardon my French, we're all nuts in. Right. We're going after the NBA. So to say that these guys aren't looking to drop a big wad of money to get into, I think they're going for it. I just don't know if the PAC's going to buy it. I think they stick together. I think Colorado moved last time in haste.
It did.
And so I think they're going to be measured. And I just don't think there's enough regents to vote them out. That's where I think it stands.
I think that's fair. Ryan, what do you think?
I'm going to go with the most consistent thing that everybody else has, and that is I have no clue. But I think that the issue is to what Larry said, the PAC or Apple going all in. I think that there probably is disagreement amongst the Pac-12 presidents with each other as far as what they want in linear versus money, and exposure versus money, and sort of trying to go back and forth. And The real risk that I think happens, and I'm going to just put this out right now, um, the deadline that I think, the real deadline I think is October 31st. And the reason why I say that is because a new conference would need about 3 or 4 months. Because remember, the schedules usually drop sometimes as early as November of the season, up to February. And I think a new conference would need time to schedule and integrate new teams and figure that out. So I think, and the thing is, the Pac can't go 1 year without a media deal. No one's going to give them the extension, and they can't afford to do that. So I think the real issue is I think this is going to drag on until I think this will drag on until one of two things happens. They finally come to an agreement on some type of deal, or they just the risk is too great to keep hammering this out, because I have to believe that this is going to be resolved by the end of this year, because this going into 2024 would be a catastrophe, because the media partners themselves would have the Pac over a barrel,
Right.
in their desperation mode, kind of, and to get the long form contract done and signed. I just think that something's going to happen. It's either they're going to agree on what it's going to be, or they're just going to say, hey, I'm done. We're going, and scatter to the wind. I think October, I think James Crepia gave, Labor Day. I think I could see this dragging out until the end of October. And I think at that point, then I think, if nothing's done, I think you see, people pull. I actually think, to your point, going back, and the more and more I think about this, I actually think we're probably headed to a full-on merger, and Stanford or Cal are told you can either come along or you can leave, and they're gonna have to make that decision. I just think it's gonna. I just think it's headed to. That's what the networks wanted from the very beginning, and I think that I think that that's probably where it's headed. But those are just my 2 cents, and they're probably they're probably like third world country 2 cents, so it's not worth.
Ryan, stop it. All right, Larry, I'm going to ask you guys to stick around if you have time tonight. We wanted to do an after show. So you and Larry just stick around. We're going to do a sort of a conclave after the show's over.
Sure.
I would appreciate that. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, let's see. So we're going to bring in our super chat here. Andrew Barchak. Thank you, Andrew, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And this is a good question, I think. In 6 years, the Big 12 will be stronger positioned to be the definitive third. I think Moen has already tipped his hat to that.
100% agree on that.
Yeah. Hope Kansas football continues to improve, and short term, CU and Arizona come aboard too. I think we both agree with you, Andrew. I think you're exactly right.
You can pull the slide up. I added Colorado and Arizona.
Yeah,
already.
if you're new, actually, let's do that. Let's run through those really quick, because we do have about 20 more people that have joined the show since we originally ran through that number. Let me get to that slide. That's a great idea, actually. Sorry, I hadn't prepared to do that, so you guys are catching me short a little bit. Which one? We're going to look at the
Let's look at
12.
the Big 12.
There we go.
Look at the
Yep.
Big 12.
So if you've joined the show,
what?
by the way, sorry, can I do this really quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're new to the show, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment or suggestion. If you want your comment to be read, like Andrew's here, do a super chat. I try to get regular chats in as much as I can. And then there's subscriptions. You can go to the main Big 12 Mafia page, hit the join button in the middle, and there's different options to join the channel. Those get highlighted to me as well. All right. Go ahead, Moen.
So let's pull up this Big 12 one. And,
oh, sorry. I turned it off. There you go.
And let's go ahead and add Oregon. We'll say Oregon State and Washington State join this conference.
I agree with that, by the way.
You got two 24-team conferences. You got one 20-team conference. You now have a pie that's divided 3 ways. You now have 3 partners that control all of college media, basically, all college sports media. I know that Tony was worried earlier about value, about how these teams create value. When you narrow the marketplace, you control, you have more leverage, you can get more money. Those 3 conferences, these 3 A3s working together, will increase money for every school that's involved here.
And let's do a couple call outs. UConn is on this list. We have Boston College and Syracuse and Pitt all moving to the Big 12. And whether they like it or not, those are schools that want to stay involved. They don't want to get left behind. This model makes it so that they stay big time. And I think that's really important.
We get the backyard brawl in the new conference. That'll be a yearly game. You add Cincinnati and Louisville, the bag of nails.
Sorry, I got to mute Robert here. Robert, can you mute your computer? There we go. All right, go ahead.
You add so many things. We've talked about this before. Rivalries and brands. You're adding brands to your conference. You're adding rivalries to your conference. You're driving value with this model.
Right.
The SEC adds value. The Big Ten adds value. The Big 12 adds value. The only schools that end up getting left out from the current schools would be Cal and Stanford, who may not even want to continue I mean, how much do they want to continue athletics versus being research institutions?
Well, and they've done that to themselves. Nobody's done that to them.
Right.
They've excluded themselves.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear about that. It's not like they don't have options. They just choose to not participate.
Right. We're not actually kicking anybody out if you add Oregon and Washington State in here. I think you cover everybody who already currently exists in the A5 outside of Cal and Stanford.
I would probably move Houston and and Iowa State to the New Friends division, and I would bring in Oregon State and Washington State. If you were to redo this slide, that's what I would do. Is I would move Iowa State and I would move Houston to the other group. But that's just me. Regionals.
Yeah,
just trying to.
It's hard with Kansas and Kansas State being, you want to keep those guys the same.
Right. You're right. And, it's tough. It gets difficult with that. You're right. Actually, ignore that. We need Kansas State and Kansas. No, I had Kansas State and Kansas together. I said Houston and Iowa State.
Right. But I would say the more likely would be an Iowa State and one of the Kansas schools, but you want to keep those together.
I want
to keep all the Texas schools together in Texas.
Fair. All right, Immaculate. Let me unmute you.
Yeah.
You've muted yourself. All right, Immaculate. Tell us where we're wrong here.
I was actually waiting to kind of see what Robert had to say. Then I can follow up with him if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. All right.
He didn't really get a chance yesterday during our show to talk much, so I just kind of want to.
Yeah, that's fine. You just mute yourself, okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, Robert, let's bring you in. All right, what's on your mind, Robert? Go ahead. The mute is
not. Got yourself muted, buddy.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I'm trying to unmute. There you go. Stay there. Leave it there.
There we go. Yeah, because it was lit on my side that was muted. I wanted to make sure.
No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. The bigger question with the Pitt one. Brett Yormark, what was the first game he went to last year?
West Virginia Pitt.
Correct. He knows that rivalry, how valuable that is.
Right.
Plus, also, you think if they get Virginia Tech, that's the Black Diamond Trophy rivalry there, too. He has two bigger rivalries right there with Virginia Tech, and it might, fan those Flames of West Virginia used to have.
Right.
Of being so competitive back in the Big East days. So that's actually a win-win for the Big 12 right there, if that would happen. What's his name who set up this graft? It seems like it would make it the football brand even stronger.
Yeah, this is Moen. Moen created this.
Moen.
So you know.
Yeah. What Moen, because I'm not really good at remembering names, but
the
way he set this up, the way he's setting it up makes sense. The only thing I disagree is with Oregon being the Big 10. I would say pushing them into the Big 12 because Brett Yormark's one goal was to move out to the West Coast time zone. You could throw Oregon and Oregon State. So there's at least a rivalry there on the West Coast. So that's where I would.
Oregon State and you're going to get Washington State. The problem is Oregon is too big of a brand. They're going to want to be in the Big Ten. And as we discussed in the show previously, there has to be a give and take between the commissioner and the presidents. The presidents don't want Oregon. The television people want Oregon. The television people will cover the freight for a school like Utah or Arizona State to come into the Big Ten if the Big Ten presidents give them Oregon.
Yeah, the only thing is with the media, they're going to probably, most likely with those Big Ten personnel, they're going to say they want more to bring in Oregon than what they would be willing to pay for Oregon. That's the big problem.
Well, when you get to
They don't
the
want another
A3 model, you're
Nebraska.
basically right now we're dividing this pie into 5 pieces. When
Right.
Of course.
you divide it into 3 pieces, you've got a lot more leverage. You add more value. You can basically go to the media partners and say, "This is the going rate. Pay us, or we'll go to somebody who will." And there's going to be somebody who will. College football, college sports content remains the most valuable media property there is. So
Live sports.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
live sports.
The only big problem is are they gonna the media partners going to have enough power to strong arm the Big Ten? Because the Big Ten is, like I've said, they're like the actual mob of college football. So it's like, really, you think they're going to have the guts to actually do that? I don't think so. On the media side, that's the only big problem.
I think it's well, if the Big Ten's not going to shy away from fighting with the media, that's the reason we've got.
That's the reason why. That's the reason you have to think where I was raised. I was raised on the East Coast. I know how this worked.
Yeah.
Even when Penn State got into the Big Ten in the '90s, I was a young boy, but I know that was a pain in the rear end just getting the Big Penn State in.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. I want to say hey to Blake Phillips, who's come in. He said, "Hey, Bomber," and gave me a super chat. Thank you very much, Blake. I'm using all that money. I'm going to be buying one of those ring lights, just so everybody knows, so my color's a little bit better. Right now, I look like I've got, what's that? When your liver quits working and you turn yellow? I've got that. Jaundice. That's what's going on with me right now with these horrible lights I got. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Robert, but.
That's no problem.
All right. Immaculate, did you want to jump in now?
Sure, I can jump in now if you guys are good.
Yeah. Robert, just mute yourself, could you, for me?
Oh, no problem. Give me a minute to find my mouse.
No problem. It's fine.
I mean, of course, I have some differences of opinion with this, but I think this is pretty good. I think it's a lot of fun. People in the chat are watching this and kind of coming up with their ideas too. So this is, even if people agree or disagree on everything, it's a good exercise for folks to start thinking about in the future. Whether you think certain people like Kirk Herbstreit are right or not in what they're saying, things are leading towards this by a lot of different vectors. So I guess I'd say first off, well done on the presentation on this.
Thanks. I did it on my phone.
I know. You say like, "Oh, this was nothing." And I'm like, okay, now I just feel dumber because I was going to ask you to enlist you to help me with mine.
What do you mean? We've done a good job. I think we do a good job. Both you guys do a great job.
It's very clean. It's very precise. People can see it. A visual really helps. Even asking people out in chat, I was like, "Should I do this with mine?" And they're like, yeah." So it's like,
okay. If you could throw up the Big Ten one real quick, Nate, and just
sure, absolutely,
that was a great job of really showing you regional. Look at that, regional. You got your coastal, you got your West Coast, you got all these regional. And that's what a national conference looks like. That's a national conference right there. When you throw up the Big 12 one, the same thing. That's a national conference. The SEC gets to maintain that regional area. They want to be the Southeastern Conference. They move up into Virginia. They move up into North Carolina. They stay regional. So, yeah, it would be really interesting. I think I'd like to take an overlay and just, kind of overlay them to see just as one single color and just overlay all 3 of them together to see how it works out. But if you need me to help, Immaculate, I'll help you. But cool. You lose me at the.
I know you're not going to agree with what I have. That I just hope that you'll like not stick a little trick in there. Like what some of the artists did at Disney when they stick something in there.
As long as Notre Dame's in the Big Ten, I'm fine.
It is.
So Blake's putting a little dig in here, and I'm going to read it because it's a super chat, but I'm not winding anybody up. This is Blake. This is not me. He says, for the T. Altimore Dummy Fund, hope he gets help. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm just saying that's what Blake says. All right, let's get back to live here.
The things that I agree with here, I would say the 10 conference game schedule. I think that's inevitable once we go to this point. And when you have 2 main top end conferences and then the one that's like the gatekeeper conference, I don't think that's as big of a deal. And I don't think OOC games become that big of a deal. and people are going to say, well, what about the the G schools and whatnot that make money off of the getting paid to come to those games? There's another mechanism that's going to help their conferences get money. I don't want to go into that too much, but it'll work out. But I do like the 10 conference game schedule. The regional rivalries, he's got the 4 divisions. I have 5, but it's the same concept. That's absolutely, those are the schools you're going to be playing every single year. You're going to be fighting for the spot in your conference tournament as a division champion. And so I really like that part about this. I think the way we've gone to where, with 2 divisions and then no divisions, it's temporary, but it's the wrong direction. I like more divisions and tighter rivalries within those divisions. I was actually looking at those bullet points, but that's okay.
Oh, I can go back. Sorry.
If you don't mind. I didn't have them memorized.
I don't mind. No.
Sorry.
I wanted to, let me get this comment from Tony Voloshin really quick.
Sure.
He says, I mistrust all Buckeyes, especially Mona Vision. Thanks for the hard work. Okay. All right.
Before you get started again, Immaculate, let me just jump in here.
Yeah.
I want to point something out here. The OOC, first must protect rivalries. That's for rivalries out of the conference. Secondary focus on small in-state schools. That's going to be the Ohio States of the world playing the Kents, the Akrons, the Penn States of the world playing Penn or Temple, the Michigans of the world playing Eastern Michigan. I think that all conferences need to start doing that, taking care of the smaller schools within their state.
Yeah, for like Iowa, we would be playing Northern Iowa, and we mix that every other year or so with Iowa State. So sometimes we'll play another one around the area, but it's a cupcake, but it's good for those programs to kind of have that as well. So I do agree with that.
They make all their money on that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this? And Greg's a partner of mine. Good to see you here, Greg. His comment says all former Big 12 teams who have left has had far less success and all making less money, I think is what he's saying there. What do you guys think about the fact that the Big 12's had schools leave and maybe we have one coming back and they haven't been as successful? I think that's one of the challenges that you have to some of these big groups is you've had schools that have moved that haven't been really successful in their moves.
Well, I guess it all depends upon the perception and it depends upon the viewer. I mean, are you talking about from our standpoint as fans and whatnot? You could look at it and say, yeah, it hasn't been great. But if you were to look at it from the perspective of an administrator who's got a budget to maintain, who's got a full scope of an athletic department full of sports and athletes to, and essentially in the future paying for.
Right.
I would say that they were successful, but as a pure football, you could argue and say it hasn't been good. It hasn't been good for Missouri in terms of outcomes. Texas A&M, I would say it isn't really due to them going to the SEC. It just kind of seems like they've had some, I don't know, maybe bad hires and bad recruiting, but I don't know if I'd say it's going a lot worse for them, but
well, they're certainly making more money.
Yes,
you can't argue.
Yeah, they're making more money.
Except for Colorado.
Situational.
Right.
Yeah, Nebraska has shot itself in the foot about 15 times since joining the Big Ten. Nebraska just needs to get out of Nebraska's own way sometimes. And
right.
They fired Bo Pelini because he was too mean, and I don't think they've sniffed 9 wins since. So.
Yeah, that was really stupid. Mike Riley was a disaster. Yeah, they've had challenges there for sure. Are there any other points? Can I put this away? Are you done with this, Immaculate?
I think I touched up on it. Like my conference tournament thing's a little different than his, but yeah, he's got good points on this. So I think he's going in the right direction. It's just little differences.
Hey Robert, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to add to the discussion?
Okay, I'm back now. Make sure the mic was working.
Yep.
Nathan, try pronouncing my last name in German.
France.
That's my correct pronunciation of my last name.
Okay. All right.
You keep on saying France. I'm like, dude, if I remember right, you took German class.
Yeah, I did take. Wow, you have a good.
That.
I think I said that once, like months ago. You have a good memory. There's no umlaut.
Oh yeah, when it comes down to long-term memory.
You need
Yeah,
you
the
need A needs an umlaut. You do that, and I'll call it France.
yeah, but because in English that's how they spell it.
No,
When
I'm
my
teasing.
came
I'm
over.
teasing you.
Yeah, I know.
I'll try.
Yeah,
to
I know
remember
you're
that.
teasing.
I'll try to remember.
Yeah, but in this case, I don't have much of gripes about how he showed it up. The only thing I would say is maybe Oregon's the only one I would say out of the Big Ten wouldn't fit, because look what they really kicking themselves for allowing Nebraska come in. That's the number one reason I see it in the back of the Big Ten's head. Like, we're not going to do another like Nebraska, make a mistake like that. Because Oregon just shows, oh, they're really good in football, but they don't offer anything else to them as a conference.
You're buying a brand. You have to know that. So as long as you know that going forward, and you know that money's coming in from Nike, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, but in their case, they're thinking more than just Nike, because Nike can decide at any moment Oregon's getting too rough for them. They pull out all business out of that state altogether.
Moen, why don't you tell them a little bit about Oregon's perception in the Big Ten today? This is something we were saving against a nugget. If you're still with us, you're going to want to clip this video part out.
Let me retort, first of all, Nebraska was a blue blood brand. Nebraska won national championships. Oregon has never won a national championship in football.
Mm-hmm.
And they carry themselves like they have. They haven't. They've been good in football for about 20 years. Congratulations. Oregon has managed to how family friendly can I? I'll try to be as family friendly as I can.
It's the family thing is turned off.
Piss off as many people as they can in the Big Ten over the last 6 months. They have pissed off.
Oh yeah, I know. They try pissing me off.
Yeah, they pissed off Penn State. They pissed off Ohio State, and then they pissed off Wisconsin. When you do things like that, it's going to be very hard for you to get into the Big Ten. And I know everybody saw the picture that Brutus posted.
Bucky and Ducky.
That's that's the social media team sticking it to Oregon. They realize it or not. That is
I even told Oregon fans the same thing. You have to kiss the ring, pretty much. You would have to kiss the ring of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, heck, even Wisconsin, maybe even Minnesota, just to make sure your ass is covered. But they don't get it. The Oregon fans just don't get it.
Yeah,
people that have been raised in this area know how it works.
Well,
I'm not
the only one.
Specifics on how Oregon pissed them off, because it's that story will come out eventually, but I don't,
Oh yeah,
they did something very stupid. I'm just going to put it that way. They did something very stupid, and now they're reaping the rewards of it.
All right.
The consequences of what they did.
Robert, I got to let you go. Thanks so much for joining the show.
No problem, buddy.
We'll talk to you later.
No problem. Yep.
Bye. All right. So I want to get to a couple comments here. Really appreciate Robert being here. Aztec Country, and I love this. He says, excited for Colorado to leave. Let's go. Obviously, he's saying that because he wants his Aztecs and maybe SMU or maybe CSU to be added to the Pac-12. We'll have to see what happens there. And then Two Masta, who has turned into a very loyal follower, he says, Nike jerseys, that's all. And I don't think anybody disagrees with you, Two Masta. Anybody who says that it's not that is, I think, delusional. So let's talk about some of the other things we spoke about. Let's get back to the CU deal. Do we think, and I'm asking you this, Immaculate, because you weren't part of that conversation. Okay. You've seen this trail of data. You followed everything that's happened in the last four or 5 days in detail. What do you think about this news yesterday? Because you and I spoke yesterday, and it didn't seem like maybe something was imminent. What do you think about this now?
As far as the quick schedule of the meeting?
Right.
Well, I use a term for it in a tweet that it's conspicuous, and it's the timing is very suspect. But this happened earlier where a similar situation happened and everyone thought it was, and it turned out to be there were an issue with some of the new facilities that they're building on campus. So I'd put that out there as a devil's advocate type of position, that this could be along those same lines. But at the same time, they're not doing themselves a favor by doing that right now, unless it's an absolute, they had to have this meeting over that type of a situation, because everyone's going to think this has to do with realignment due to how soon after media days it was and with what's going on. So it certainly seems possible. There's a lot of smoke out there. I know Greg Swaim in your chats saying a few things about it out there, which if true is very interesting, but I don't know. I'd say just watch close. If we see something else by the end of the week, then it might be true. We'll see.
I'm going to bring up that just so everybody can see what we're talking about. The thing that stands out to most people is that this just showed up almost 24 hours to the minute that it was supposed to come out, right? They have to give 24 hours notice.
Yeah.
I just can't see them. It's summer. It's vacation time. These guys want to be out doing other things with their family. I find it hard to believe that they would just do this pop-up one just for the hell of it.
Yeah. And if they're going to do something, they need to get it done, in my opinion, this month. You start going into August, you start messing with the bell cow. You know, you're messing with football. You don't do that. I don't think people realize just how much things have changed. Like, they would have never carried this far into the summer realignment talk. The fact that this has become such a big deal and is taking away from their football media days, kind of blew my mind. Just thinking back that they would have never allowed that. But yeah, I think if it is, then we'll probably see it come next week. I don't see them trying to step on the toes of two other major conferences during their media days on their final day, like a Friday announcement.
Right. Is that when the ACC ends?
Both Big Ten and ACC are going this week.
Oh, I didn't know they were. I didn't know both of them were going. So
yeah, they all finish in July. No one does it into August. So
when's the last day? Thursday? For both?
Thursday or Friday. If it's Thursday, then Friday might be possible. But if their last days are Friday, then
I agree.
Then no, I'd
well,
probably.
If you do it on a Friday, you control the media cycle for the entire weekend.
You are absolutely right. But is that worth stepping on toes of your fellow A5 schools?
I don't think it is. But Brett Yormark, I don't think cares about those sacred cows.
Right. You might be right. I mean, something like this is pretty big. And if you're running out of days, I mean, actually, what is Monday? Is that August?
Is it the 31st? No.
August.
Yeah.
Tuesday's August.
So it's the last day of July.
Okay, I wasn't even thinking about that, but now. Oof.
Here's a comment from Nabunga. Nabunga, I think you're a recent follower. Thanks for being here. By the way, if you're just joining the show or the channel, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment or suggestion, become a subscriber. The join button on the main Big 12 Mafia page, hit that. You can become a subscriber. I try to bring up those comments as often as I can. And then super chats, obviously, I read all those. This comment I really like. I wonder what the Oregon's interim president could have done to rile up OSU, PSU, Wisconsin. I would put Michigan on that list. The public perception is that leadership was pretty lame duck since Schill left. Can you address any of that without exposing your stuff, Moen?
It's an athletics matter. It has nothing to do with the president of Oregon. It's between the athletic departments.
Okay, I want to make sure we got that clear. Let's see what else we got here. Let me just run through these comments. I think this was a great show, guys, especially as a pop-up show. Thanks for participating. At the end of the day, everybody, please follow these guys on Twitter. They're amazing resources, and everything they put out is not garbage, so please follow them. I've used a couple resources today, specifically Greg Pflugar's stuff, so go watch and subscribe to his Peek Around the Corner channel. He's an amazing contributor, and I really appreciate all the stuff he puts out on Twitter. Everybody else, thanks for joining. I have a show tomorrow. It's going to be with UConn people, if you can believe it or not. And so we're going to be talking about this. I guarantee that slide that has UConn on it, Moen, he's going to want to talk about. So if you're available, I'm going to be doing that. I believe it's at 9:30 Eastern. I know that's late for everybody. If you can't join, I appreciate that. But
right, I might update that slide to include Washington State and Oregon State.
I would do that. I think you're right about that.
I think this is one of the great things about this show is that so many people can come together and offer different viewpoints. that I think that makes so much sense now that you brought it up. Let's just go. We'll go ahead and we'll do that. We'll just leave Stanford and Cal out there doing their research.
I appreciate that. Now, Moen, I'm going to give you a last chance. Is there anything else you want to tell everybody?
Donate James Cancer Hospital. Look up James Cancer Hospital. Donate. You can donate to any cancer you choose to the building fund. Massive things underway at the James Cancer Hospital. It's incredible. Also, look up on YouTube, If Not for Ohio State. Great ongoing series produced that shows how people are benefiting from some of the research techniques we're pioneering right here in the Big Ten.
And hang on a second. Before everybody goes, I thought to do this, and then I completely forgot about it. This is that cancer center that Moen's talking about. James, it's at Ohio State, so I don't care if you like Ohio State or not. Cancer research and support. I'm alive because of some of that stuff that happened. I would really appreciate it if everybody took a look. And as Moen says, give a little donation if you got some money. How about you, Immaculate? Is there anything you want to bring up before we let everybody go?
Well, I'd say job well done on this. This was, I thought, very informative. Even if I didn't agree with everything, I thought it was a great step to kind of get people thinking in this direction. I'm very interested in possibly doing something similar and working with you guys to put one together as well. And I urge everyone to kind of think in this direction. This is where we're going, so it prepares you for when things start to happen. And what I think is very quickly, and when I'm saying quickly, I mean 2024. So job well done, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll be on tomorrow night. It'll be late, 7:30. It's actually 9:30 Eastern. Look for that. If you've subscribed, please turn on your notifications so that you know you're going to be receiving those notifications when I do my show. Really appreciate it. Everybody have a great night. And I'm going to close. Hang on. I love this close. If you're with the show right now and on, Moen and Immaculate, stick around, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Peace.